Let's begin with a very simple example. Take a look at this chart. This chart comes from a report that shows what percentage of people on different age groups say that they are influenced in their buying decisions by different kinds of media. So this is the way to read this chart. You can focus on trailing millennials, very young people, and you can see that nearly 75% of them say that they are highly influenced by television ads, but fewer than 50% say that they are influenced by newspaper ads, a few more than 50% say that they are influenced by magazine ads, and so on and so forth. You have the same thing on each one of the age groups. So if you go to the older ones, the oldest people over here, they are barely, just a little bit more than 50% say that they are influenced by television. A few more than 50% say they are influenced by newspapers, but much fewer of them say that they are influenced by movie theater ads, in-theater ads, or even radio advertisement. So the question when you face a graphic like this is how to organize the bars. Do you think that this organization, this way of sorting the bars is correct? Well, it always depends on what you want to emphasize. So that's always a thing to remember. So last week we talked a little bit about how to choose graphic forms correctly. In this module, we are focusing a little bit more about how to organize things in a way that they make sense or in a way that they enable understanding. So the question we could ask here is if it is more important to be able to compare methods of delivering advertisement like television, newspapers within each age group, all right, in which case this chart is fine because as I said before, I can focus just on very young people and then compare the different bars of different colors, etc. Or I can compare on I can focus my eyes on boomers and then compare the different bars within boomers. So if the goal is to compare the methods of delivery, the media, within each age group, this bar graph works really well. But what if the goal is not that? What if the goal is to show the change, right, across age groups? So which methods of delivery, which media become more or less influential among people across the generations? In this case, if that were the goal of the graphic, this is not a very good arrangement because you can clearly see the trend in television, right? You can see that television goes up a little bit and then it goes down. But you can see television clearly just because the television bar on each one of the age groups has a very strong color, so you can see it stands out, and it's the first one in the sequence. But try to, for example, to spot the trends in movie theater ads. It takes a little bit longer, right? If you try to see the trend in theater ads, I'm forcing you to, first of all, identify the dark green bars one by one and then basically memorize them. Okay, you need to do it even with your fingers, like I'm doing with my cursor right now. So this is not a very good arrangement, a very good organization if the goal is to compare across age groups. It would be much better if that is the emphasis that we want to have, to rearrange the bars, and rather than organize the bars by age groups, we could organize the bars by method of delivery, but by media. For example, we have television ads, and then each one of the bars corresponds to each one of the age groups. So very young people, slightly older my age, a little bit older, and then much older. So you can see the downward trend, upward trend in newspaper advertisement. Magazines stay the same. In theater ads or movie theater ads go down dramatically. Radio advertisement goes up until middle age groups and then it goes down. All right, so these highlights the trends across age groups. So we need to decide. I mean, neither of these graphics is bad or good. It all depends on what the emphasis of the graphic should be. Right? You may be asking why I didn't use different colors on these bars. I didn't think that it was necessary because this is a natural sequence, right? From youngest to oldest. So I would not use different colors here. What we could do is to use different shades of the same color. That will be proper to use lighter for younger and darker for older. So you can see the progression. But as long as we are numbering the bars already and people know that these correspond to age groups, we don't even need to have different colors. An alternative graphic, by the way, to show these will be to use a non-orthodox line chart like this one. Many people believe that line charts are just to show, or should be used just to show time series data, right? Year by year, month by month, etc., etc. But that is not true. I mean, when you have a natural sequence like age groups, right, like generations, okay, it is completely appropriate to use a line chart that highlights the trends across the age groups. Okay? So this will be an alternative to the bar graph that we have over here. Let me show you another example of emphasis. This is a graphic that comes from Thomas Piketty's Capital in the 21st Century, which was a bestseller, I believe, when it was published in 2015. Well, before I proceed to talk a little bit about what I believe could change in this graphic, let me tell you that the graphic has some room for improvement, just because the distances between the years over here are not even, and that creates a very misleading impression. This is a time series chart. It's not a line chart, it's an area chart, but it's a time series area chart, and the intervals of years here are not even, and that is wrong, right? So that's something that we could fix. All right, that's the fixed X scale. Right, it's a quick redesign that I made of the original. Well, this is also a redesign that I made of the original graphic, because the original graphic was not in color. Right, so this is how it should look like actually. But this is not what I would like to talk about. I don't want to talk about the x-axis. What I want to talk about again is emphasis. Now, the title of the chart is Europe's GDP in comparison to the rest of continents throughout the years. Therefore, the title itself of the original graphic tells you what the emphasis is, comparing Europe to the rest. All right? In which case, this is a perfectly fine graphic, because I can see the variation of Europe quite well, just because Europe section, right? Europe segment is sitting on the baseline, right? So I can clearly see the change in the Europe segment, because everything is measured based on the zero baseline, right? So according to the goal of the graphic is stated in the title, this graphic here is perfectly fine. Europe versus the rest. But what if the title were not Europe versus the rest? What about if the title were comparing the world's continents according to GDP, right? We want to compare all continents at the same level, on the same footing. Well, in that case, this graphic doesn't really work that well, if that is the emphasis, because I can certainly see the variation of Europe, because it is measured from this zero baseline. But seeing the variation of America is harder, because the baseline of the American segment is shifting according to how tall the Europe segment is at each point in time. Therefore, you need to use your fingers to estimate the distance between this point and that point, this point and this point, this point and this point, that point and that point. This is a very common problem in stacked graphics. This is a stacked area chart. All right, it only works if the goal is to compare this to the rest. If this is the primary element and these are secondary elements, then this kind of graphic works. But if the goal is to compare Europe to America, to Africa, to Asia, with some sort of accuracy, you will need to de-stack the chart, or non-stack, create a non-stacked version of the chart in which all the lines are measured against a common zero baseline. Again, thinking about emphasis when we organize the elements on the chart. Here, the emphasis is Europe versus the rest. Here, the emphasis is comparing all continents to each other.